Kenya, a country in East Africa, is renowned for its remarkable geographical and cultural diversity. From the snow-capped peaks of Mount Kenya to the shores of the Indian Ocean, Kenya's landscapes are as varied as its people. The country boasts a rich history, having been home to some of the earliest human settlements. Kenya's cultural heritage is a vibrant tapestry woven together from the traditions of over 40 ethnic groups. Kenya's strategic location along ancient trade routes has resulted in a fascinating blend of African, Arab and European influences. This fusion is evident in its music, art, cuisine and architecture. This essay will delve into the depths of Kenyan civilization, exploring its historical milestones, traditional customs and the influence of its diverse ethnic groups. We will also examine the impact of modernization on Kenya's cultural fabric. Kenya holds a unique place in human history as the cradle of humankind. This East African nation is home to some of the most significant archaeological and paleontological sites in the world, offering a window into our distant past. Archaeological discoveries in the Great Rift Valley, such as the Turkana Boy fossil, provide compelling evidence of early hominid existence dating back millions of years. The Turkana Boy, a nearly complete skeleton of a young Homo erectus, has been instrumental in shedding light on the physical and developmental characteristics of our early ancestors. These findings have revolutionized our understanding of human evolution and established Kenya as a site of immense paleontological significance. Museums and research institutions around the world now feature exhibits dedicated to these groundbreaking discoveries, highlighting Kenya's pivotal role in the story of human origins. The Kubifora region, on the eastern shore of Lake Turkana, is renowned for its rich fossil beds, attracting researchers and scientists from around the globe. This area has yielded numerous fossils that have provided critical insights into the evolution of early hominids and the environmental conditions they faced. Beyond these ancient origins, Kenya has a long and complex history. The land has been a crossroads of cultures, peoples and civilizations for thousands of years, each leaving its mark on the region's heritage. The arrival of Bantu-speaking communities around 2,000 years ago marked a significant shift in the region's cultural landscape. These communities brought with them advanced agricultural practices, ironworking skills, and new social structures that transformed the way of life in the region. These skilled agriculturalists and pastoralists established settlements and introduced new farming techniques shaping the development of societies in Kenya. Their innovations in crop cultivation and livestock management laid the foundations for the thriving agricultural communities that exist today. Their influence continues to resonate in the country's cultural practices, languages and social structures. The diverse languages spoken in Kenya, the rich tapestry of cultural traditions and the strong sense of community all trace their roots back to these early Bantu settlers, whose legacy endures in modern Kenyan society. The arrival of Arab traders on the Kenyan coast in the 8th century AD marked the beginning of a new era of cultural exchange. These traders established bustling port cities such as Mombasa, Malindi and Lamu, which soon became important centers of commerce and cultural fusion. The Swahili culture, a unique blend of African and Arab traditions, emerged along the coast, characterized by its distinctive language, architecture and Islamic faith. The Swahili language, a Bantu language with significant Arabic influence, became the lingua franca of trade along the East African coast, facilitating communication and commerce over vast distances. Swahili cities flourished as centers of trade, exporting ivory, gold, spices and other goods to Arabia, Persia, India and even China. This vibrant maritime trade brought immense wealth to the coastal cities and fostered cultural exchange between East Africa and the wider Indian Ocean world. Section 4. The arrival of Europeans' colonialism and its impact. The arrival of the Portuguese in the 16th century marked the beginning of European involvement in Kenya's history. They were the first Europeans to set foot on the East African coast. Driven by the desire to control the lucrative spice trade and establish a foothold in the Indian Ocean. The Portuguese sought to control the lucrative Indian Ocean trade routes and established forts along the coast. These forts served as strategic points for trade and military operations, aiming to dominate the region's commerce. However, their presence was met with resistance from the local communities, who were determined to protect their land and sovereignty. The Portuguese influence gradually waned as they faced continuous opposition and competition from other European powers. By the 19th century, British interest in East Africa grew significantly. The British were driven by a desire to control the source of the Nile, secure trade routes to the interior, and expand their empire. They sent explorers and missionaries to map the region and establish their presence. The British established a protectorate over Kenya in the late 19th century, marking the beginning of colonial rule. This move was part of the larger scramble for Africa, where European powers divided the continent among themselves without regard for existing ethnic and cultural boundaries. The colonial administration implemented policies that had a profound impact on Kenya's social, economic and political structures. They introduced new systems of governance, taxation and land ownership that disrupted traditional ways of life and imposed foreign control over the local population. Land alienation, forced labor, and the introduction of cash crops transformed traditional ways of life. The British expropriated large tracts of fertile land for European settlers, displacing local communities and forcing them into labor on plantations. This led to significant social and economic changes, as well as widespread resentment and resistance. The suppression of indigenous cultures and the imposition of Western education systems further disrupted existing social fabrics. The colonial education system aimed to create a class of educated Africans who could serve as intermediaries between the colonial administration and the local population, but it also eroded traditional knowledge and practices. Throughout the colonial period, Kenyans resisted foreign domination through various means, including armed uprisings, protests, and the formation of political movements. These efforts laid the groundwork for the eventual struggle for independence, which would come to fruition in the mid-20th century. The impact of colonialism on Kenya was profound and lasting, shaping the nation's history and identity. The struggle for independence culminated in 1963, when Kenya gained its freedom and began the challenging process of building a new post-colonial society. Section 5. The struggle for independence, the Mau Mau uprising, and the birth of a nation. The injustices and exploitation of colonialism sparked resistance movements across Kenya. The British colonial administration imposed harsh economic policies, forced labor, and land alienation, which severely affected the local population, especially the Kikuyu community. These oppressive measures led to widespread discontent and a growing desire for self-determination. The Mau Mau uprising, which began in the 1950s, was a pivotal moment in the struggle for independence. It was not just a rebellion, but a symbol of the Kenyan people's resilience and determination to reclaim their land and rights. The movement was characterized by its clandestine operations and the use of guerrilla warfare tactics, which made it difficult for the British forces to suppress. The Mau Mau, primarily drawn from the Kikuyu community, waged a guerrilla war against British rule, demanding land restitution and an end to oppression. The fighters took to the forests and mountains, using their knowledge of the terrain to launch surprise attacks on colonial forces and collaborators. Their struggle was fueled by a deep sense of injustice and a longing for freedom. The uprising was brutally suppressed by the colonial government, which employed severe measures including mass detentions, torture, and public executions. Despite this, the Mau Mau uprising galvanized international support for Kenya's independence movement. The global community began to take notice of the plight of the Kenyan people, and pressure mounted on the British government to address the situation. After years of struggle and negotiation, Kenya finally gained independence on December 12, 1963. The day was marked by jubilant celebrations across the country as the Kenyan flag was raised for the first time, symbolizing the end of colonial rule and the birth of a new nation. Jomo Kenyatta, a prominent figure in the independence movement, became Kenya's first president. His leadership was instrumental in uniting the diverse ethnic groups within Kenya and laying the foundation for the new nation. Kenyatta's vision for Kenya was one of unity, peace, and progress. The post-independence era brought about significant changes, including the introduction of a new constitution, the establishment of a multi-party democracy, and efforts to address social and economic inequalities. The new government faced the daunting task of rebuilding a nation that had been deeply scarred by years of colonial exploitation and conflict. However, the legacy of colonialism continued to cast a shadow over Kenya, shaping its political landscape and influencing its development trajectory. The challenges of nation-building were immense, but the spirit of the Mau Mau uprising and the determination of the Kenyan people remained a driving force in the country's ongoing journey towards progress and prosperity.